Not too long ago, I decided to binge watch Dexter. All because I kept seeing Dexter clips and video essays pop up on my main feed. And you know what? The show looked pretty interesting, and fans of the show also implored me to give it a try. So I did. And you know what? I was fucking hooked. I managed to get through the entire series in just 2 weeks. And then I watched New Blood in one long sitting. Given the recent release of Original Sin and the announcement of and ensuing production launch of Dexter Resurrection, I decided, you know what? I want to make some fucking Dexter content. As such, I thought, what better way to delve into this fandom than by determining whether or not our favorite serial killer is a good person. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump straight into the thick of it. Dexter Morgan, as you all should know by now, had a pretty traumatic childhood experience. And you know what? Who could blame him? He literally watched as his mom was butchered into pieces like a slab of deli meat. And then he basically sat in a metal box covered in more blood than your typical slaughterhouse. After this, he was adopted by Harry Morgan, a respected Miami cop who quickly realized something was off with Dexter. Eventually, Dexter pretty much developed a need to kill. His bloodlust became more than just a desire for him. So, with the aid of Dr. Evelyn Vogel, Harry developed a code for Dexter, a code which we would come to know as the Code of Harry. This code of conduct served as Dexter's primary code of ethics. It channeled the violent impulses of his dark passenger, focusing them on people who arguably deserve to die. The Code of Harry also ensured that Dexter would never kill an innocent, in theory, requiring him to prove the guilt of his targets before he could allow himself to murder them. But the code also valued one principle above all, being that Dexter ought to avoid getting caught at all costs. So instead of actually trying to help Dexter, Harry and Vogel basically threw in the towel and turned Dexter into an apex predator, one which preyed upon other serial killers, and one which eventually came to kill a few innocent people as well. They also managed to convince the serial killer in the making that he was an irredeemable monster incapable of actively experiencing emotions, thus stunting his future ability to emancipate himself from the heavy chains of his dark passenger's influence. So given that extremely condensed breakdown of Dexter's story, how are we to view the content of Dexter's character? When discussing the morality of Dexter Morgan, one simply cannot discount how his urge to kill was more than just a mere want or craving. For the longest time, this hunger was a psychological necessity that was exacerbated by the Code of Harry and the constant dehumanization of Dexter by his adoptive father. Dexter was essentially indoctrinated to believe that he couldn't be cured of his addiction. As such, instead of crawling out of his dark hole, he was led to continue digging deeper and deeper into the abyss. But deep down, Dexter clearly yearned to feel emotions like normal people, and he also seemingly yearned not to be a slave to his dark passenger. This was a man who wanted to be accepted and who wanted to foster real connections to other people. So given all of this vitally important contextual information, one would be hard-pressed to say that Dexter is truly evil. In a very real way, he was a victim himself. But being a victim and suffering from trauma does not absolve him of the crimes and sins he's committed. It merely reduces the weight of his culpability. For example, one could argue that Dexter's actions had saved countless lives, but Dexter never terminated his prey because justice was his prime motive. It was always fundamentally a selfish act meant to quench his bloodlust. And while outcomes matter more than intent, generally speaking, one's intentions still matter when weighing the moral culpability of said individual's actions. If you save a man from drowning, that's typically considered to be a supremely ethical act. But if you save them just because you want to kill them later, now all of a sudden that momentary moral act becomes an immorally self-serving act that just so happened to have a temporarily good outcome. Yes, Dexter saved many innocent lives, but he also violated the social contract we abide by. And he did all of this for the wrong reasons. Had Dexter merely given his findings to law enforcement, many of these serial killers could have been brought to justice without Dexter having to strap them to his table. To give Dexter a pass as a vigilante is to essentially throw out the rule of law, and it is also to claim that the ends always justify the means. This clearly is an untenable position, but given Dexter's upbringing, one cannot fully blame him for this. Harry Morgan and Evelyn Vogel clearly both carry some, but not all, of the weight of Dexter's moral culpability. This brutal fact that Dexter is still primarily responsible for his actions becomes blatantly apparent later on in the series, when Dexter recognizes that he doesn't have to be a slave to his dark passenger. When Dexter decides to leave for Argentina with Hannah and Harrison, he openly admits to the audience that he no longer has a need to kill, that he only aimed to kill Saxon because he felt he needed to for the safety of those he loved. And even then, he did what he wasn't able to do in the past. He was willing to let his adoptive sister Deb and Miami PD bring Saxon to justice. Prior to this event, Dexter would actively sabotage the judicial system to allow for his targets to avoid serving jail time, just so he could murder these criminals himself. So clearly Dexter could have been cured. Clearly he could have sought help. Yet for the longest time, he refused to search for a path to salvation, despite it being in his face like a glaring neon billboard when he felt genuine love for his biological brother, when he felt love for Deborah when he chose her over Brian, when he fell in love with Rita and her children, when he abided by Deborah's wishes to euthanize her, or when he euthanized Camilla Fig because she asked him to do so. There are countless examples of Dexter feeling love and empathy for others, all throughout the series. Dexter must have known to some degree that he was lied to by Harry, yet he chose to ignore these truths and these very real feelings just to justify indulging in his addiction to murder. Instead of doing the hard work necessary to change, he merely convinced himself that Harry was right, that he was a monster incapable of being redeemed. This selfish desire to kill and to maintain his addiction led directly to the death of his wife Rita, which was the single most consequential moment in the series and in Dexter's adult life. And then there's all the innocent people that he killed. Dexter once killed the wrong man. He once killed a man after snapping in a bathroom because he was incapable of handling the grief he was suffering from, as the direct result of Rita's death at the hands of the Trinity Killer. In order to save his own ass, he was willing to kill LaGuerta, and he literally killed Logan in New Blood just to escape jail time and to spend time with his son. But to be fair to Dexter, he never killed innocents unless he felt he had to, often going to great lengths to avoid violating that part of Harry's code. And many of the innocents who died because of him weighed heavily on his conscience, to the point where he literally exiled himself after Deborah's death, a death that he didn't even cause. This exilement literally led to a 10-year murder hiatus for Dexter. So for all of these selfishly impermissible things that Dexter did, he clearly valued innocent life to some degree. He clearly felt some genuine fucking guilt. All in all, Dexter was not some evil monstrosity, but he wasn't really a moral or heroic vigilante either. Dexter was a victim of emotional neglect and also a deeply flawed addict who often chose his addiction over salvation, despite having all of the proof needed to recognize that he could be saved. And in a sense, this makes Dexter an incredibly tragic character who was caught in a cycle of violence that he was unable to break free from. Anyways, if you like this sort of content, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Click the bell as well, that way you may be notified when I publish a new video. And remember that you may opine anytime if you feel so inclined, down in the comments section. I'm Captain Gold and hope to see you in my next Gold Standard video.